The night hung heavy with an oppressive stillness as I embarked on what I hoped would be my final delivery of the evening. Leonardo's Pizzeria, a small establishment nestled on the outskirts of town, was winding down for the night, and I was eager to return home. Little did I know, the events of this fateful night would haunt me for years to come. My boss, Frank, assigned me the last delivery of the night, 2 regular pizzas to a remote farmhouse on the outskirts of town. Armed with a slip of paper bearing the address and a worn-out map, I set out into the darkness, the faint glow of the moon casting eerie shadows across the deserted roads. The drive was treacherous, the narrow lanes winding through dense woods and empty farmland. The lack of streetlights only added to the sense of isolation, and I found myself relying solely on the dim glow of my headlights to navigate the unfamiliar terrain. As I neared the address, my unease grew. The farmhouse was located on Willows Road, a desolate stretch of land known for its eerie atmosphere and whispered tales of hauntings. Ignoring the creeping sense of dread that clawed at my mind, I pressed on, determined to complete my delivery and return to the safety of civilization. Arriving at the farmhouse, I was greeted by a scene straight out of a nightmare. The old building loomed ominously in the darkness, its weathered facade illuminated by the faint glow of a single lantern. The air was thick with an otherworldly chill, and a sense of foreboding settled over me like a shroud. Summoning every ounce of courage I possessed, I made my way to the front door, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. With trembling hands, I knocked, the sound reverberating through the silent air like a death knell. For what felt like an eternity, there was no response. Just as I was about to turn away and retreat to the safety of my car, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior cloaked in shadows. Hesitantly, I stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath my weight. The air was thick with the musty scent of decay, and the faint sound of whispering voices filled the room. As I ventured further into the house, I felt as though I was being watched, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Suddenly, from the darkness emerged a figure, its features obscured by the dim light. It beckoned to me with a gnarled hand, its voice a haunting whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Welcome, traveler," it intoned, its voice dripping with malice. "You have entered the domain of the shadows, where the echoes of the past linger forevermore." Paralyzed with fear, I could only stand and watch as the figure approached, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. And as its outstretched hand closed around my throat, dragging me into the darkness, I realized with a sinking feeling that I had stumbled upon something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. And as the night wore on and the shadows grew ever darker, I knew that I was lost to the darkness, condemned to wander the halls of the farmhouse for all eternity. My name is Ethan, and I work as a courier. Every day, I deliver and pick up packages to different addresses. It's usually a routine job, but one day, things took a strange turn during a delivery. That day, I entered an apartment building to deliver a standard package. I stood in front of the door, rang the bell, and waited. After a few seconds, the door slowly opened, revealing an elderly man. He took the package with a faint smile and thanked me. Normally, my job would end there, but this time things took a different turn. The elderly man said, "Come in, let me offer you something." I felt a strange sensation, but out of politeness, I accepted his offer. As I stepped into the apartment, the atmosphere changed suddenly. Silence enveloped me like a cold breath. The elderly man headed towards the kitchen table in an eerie silence and poured a cup of tea. "Have a sip. I prepared something special for you," he said. I started drinking, but a sense of unease washed over me. The tea tasted off, with a bitterness that hinted at something hidden within. Suddenly, the elderly man's eyes locked onto mine, and a strange smile spread across his face. "I've been expecting you, Ethan," he said, his voice a low whisper. Panic surged within me, and I didn't know what to do. With a swift motion, the elderly man's hand reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. "I'm glad I found you. Now you can't escape," he said, his eyes gleaming with madness. My heart raced as I struggled, but a dark force seemed to close in around me. Suddenly, screams echoed from within the apartment and the door burst open as police officers rushed in, subduing the elderly man. In a moment of shock, I held my breath, realizing the madness concealed behind the old man's eyes. The police helped me out and we hurriedly left the building. As I stepped outside, the night air greeted me, slowly dispelling my fear. However, that day was unforgettable. With every delivery, I remembered the old man's crazed eyes and never felt like an ordinary courier again. Perhaps that day taught me to see the dark truths lurking behind mundane tasks. In the streets I traverse as a courier, I've come to understand that everyone has a story, and some can be truly terrifying. I now tread cautiously, evaluating each customer once more, for I've learned that real fears can hide in the most unexpected places. After that terrifying day, I did my best to erase the memories. However, with each delivery, the haunting memory lingered. Routine tasks in my profession began to feel more eerie. I wondered about the secrets, the dangers concealed behind each package, uncertain yet vigilant. A few weeks later, on another ordinary day's end, I set off for home. As I quietly walked beneath the streetlights, I suddenly heard rapid footsteps behind me. I swiftly turned, but there was no one there. My heart pounded as once again I recalled the old man's crazed eyes. I started running towards my home, feeling a shadow closing in on me with every corner turned. When I reached my door, I fumbled with trembling hands to unlock it, quickly shutting and bolting it behind me, holding my breath. Yet, even within the silence of my home, I couldn't find solace. A lingering sense of danger persisted, as if a shadow were still watching me. As I wandered through the rooms, a rustling sound broke the silence. My heart stopped as I scanned the room, expecting the worst. I carefully surveyed every corner, yet found nothing. Perhaps I had let my imagination run wild, or maybe what I experienced was nothing but a figment of my mind. But the memories of that dark day remained fresh in my mind. After what felt like an eternity, I regained my composure and tried to carry on as if it were a normal day. But since that day, walking the streets at night became a nightmare. Every shadow, every sound reminded me of the ghostly presence of that elderly man. Even working as a courier failed to bring me solace. Each delivery felt like the beginning of a nightmare replay. But life went on, and I had to move forward. Sleep became difficult, living in a world filled with nightmares where the line between reality and imagination blurred. Perhaps I needed to find a way to forget, or maybe I had to accept the reality of that dark day and confront it. But for now, the madness in the old man's eyes still haunted me, and walking the streets at night always felt like a part of a horror story.